Hello everybody, so this video is entitled MSTR stock, he bought more, Saylor bought more, but unfortunately we have a very bad macro coming up, I fear, on the geopolitical front, and so that's going to have an impact on oil, could have an impact on inflation expectations, and unfortunately Bitcoin, I have no idea where Bitcoin is headed. If Bitcoin doesn't do well, if Bitcoin stays stuck at these levels, there's not going to be any excitement coming back for the asset. If Bitcoin stays in the valley of despair, MSTR will stay in a valley of despair. STRC will stay in a valley of despair. To be interested in MSTR, in STRC, in Bitcoin, obviously, you have to believe in Bitcoin. You have to believe in the thesis behind Bitcoin, which requires a lot of work, thousands of hours of work. You know, you got to start with Saifedean's book, right? The Bitcoin Standard, and understand everything going on before these instruments are even considered. And of course, we comment the short term, right? I comment the short term, but over the long term, my confidence in Bitcoin is as high as it's ever been. It's still there. My confidence in Bitcoin over the long term is still there. It's just that the sentiment on MSTR is not very good right now. And the liquidity is an issue as well. If there's not a lot of bid, a lot of the liquid funds moved away from these, investment type assets like treasury companies, but not just that, right? SaaS, any of this type of risk on asset has seen a dry up in capital, and that capital is going to AI, that capital is going to Marvel, that capital is going to Micron. So anyways, Saylor though is steady-heady. He tweeted his Atlas Society speech again today that he did back when Bitcoin was at $15,000. I started looking at it again, and it's a very good speech, by the way. You really do feel the intellectual approach that Saylor has to Bitcoin. Saylor has become, in my view, a great advocate for Bitcoin, but unfortunately the market sentiment is not helping, granting him only a 1.13 MNAV. Now remember, this is a snapshot of Thursday evening. That's when that snapshot was, and so why is that a problem? Because Thursday evening was pretty much the worst of the worst for Bitcoin and for the sentiment, at least for this week. And so that might not be actually the MNAV that he used to ATM all week. He could have been ATMing on Monday and Tuesday, which were not too bad, and then stopped ATMing later. Saylor has said before that he only ATMs into strength. And so perhaps he didn't ATM on Thursday because of the weakness that there was. So what do I expect? I expect a small buy. I expect something like 200 million raised, something like maybe 100 million put in the cash reserve, rebuilding that cash reserve to the level where it used to be when they bought back the convertible debt a few weeks back. I think Saylor now sees that it may have been a mistake, including also selling the 32 Bitcoins. It may have been a mistake. We don't know. The jury's still out about that. But I doubt he's interested in selling more Bitcoin, given the sentiment cascade that it triggered. And I think he could have bought maybe 100 million in BTC. So small buy, that's what I expect. I don't expect anything big because the stock was weak last week. It was fairly weak. That's Saylor's version of doing nothing. Of do nothing and wait. And I think that's what a lot of people in the community are saying, okay, we should just do nothing and wait. We should all go on vacation, really. It's like that's what I want to do when I see some of the madness going on in the markets. And that's especially what I want to do when I see that we could have a really bad week coming up. We could have, Bitcoin could be hurt, right? The pain on credit instruments, i.e. yields up equal price of these credit instruments down, so stretch down, SATA down, if the yields are up, if the 10-year is up, on inflation fears, on interest rate fears, on oil prices. If oil prices go up, inflation expectation could go up. And if inflation expectation could go up, the 10-year could go up, and the price of credit instruments, the price of preferred stocks like STRC or SATA could be down. And risk assets as a whole also could be down. But here's the problem. The problem is my could here. This could is a problem because we are in a binary market. This is a dichotomous market, a on-off market based on a tweet. perhaps before the futures open. Like an hour before the futures open tonight, Sunday. This is Sunday today. Tonight, in what, 4 hours, 5 hours, you could have a single tweet. And that single tweet could turn my could into a definitely would lead to a crash or definitely would lead to a rally on a single tweet. This is the binary market that we're in. It's much closer to a casino, which is once again why I just want to go have a walk in the forest and go close the apps and take a vacation, because unfortunately this market, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, it's been driven by macro news and MidEast news for the past 3 good months. I would argue 1010 was also it was more of a liquidity event news started by the government shutdown, but that was also uncertainty that was brought about by a very, very few people. Just very few tweets drive the market. We live in tweet-driven market, and so that's why I use the word could. And I don't know what's going to happen, and that's this is just bad uncertainty. This is fully unknown what could happen, and of course, what's going on in the Middle East hurts Bitcoin because, like I said before, the biggest exchange for Bitcoin is headquartered in Abu Dhabi, and they have a big impact on price. That's one of my takes. But the market will eventually grow numb to this, but it may take a little longer for this to grow numb. The bad macro news going on over there, it could take maybe, I've always said between 12 to 18 months for really, really bad macro events to be forgotten. People will forget at some point. People will ignore it at some point, but the market is not there just yet. Today, the market largely ignores the tariff issue, but that's because the tariff issue was now over a year ago, and nobody really looks at it or anything like that. So, anyways, Bitcoin is dependent on macro at this point, and MSTR and STRC depend on Bitcoin to do well. And if Bitcoin stays in the gutters at 64,000, which is not a good price, if Bitcoin stays there, I don't expect these assets to do much. Excitement for Bitcoin needs to come back. Retail excitement needs to come back, especially for an instrument like STRC, which is owned by 3/5 retail, right? And surprisingly, despite the bad macro news we had over the weekend, surprisingly, Bitcoin's been holding up 64,000. Bitcoin's been holding up, but this is for example. So Bitcoin's holding up. This is the headline we got 2 hours ago. President Trump hit very hard. We're back to these headlines. Hit very hard. We're back to this. You remember 2 months ago when we had these headlines, Bitcoin crashed. Bitcoin was not reacting well to these headlines. So Bitcoin may be growing numb to these headlines yet. But we don't know what kind of tweet we're going to see before the market opens. We don't know over a week what kind of tweets we're going to see, and Bitcoin may not stay numb to this forever. And if you look at the Fear and Greed Index, it seems like retail sentiment is dropping again. Racing, you can't really see. I need to zoom on this, but it's zooming. It's kind of flat over a weekend, but it was dropping pretty hard. And my guess is it could be sent right back to extreme fear territory if we don't get some macro good news. So I really want some macro good news. The problem is my word could. It could happen. It could happen, but we don't know because this is dependent on headlines that depend on a very, very few key people, right? A few heads of states is really one of the most frustrating, market to invest in my view. I guess people who do options are having fun, but to me, as a long-term investor, this is a frustrating market. So, anyways, this was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.